it does create matchup problems offensively, but it just as importantly, more importantly, allows you some flexibility on defense to do things maybe you couldn't normally do if you didn't have someone of that caliber.
How about just in general, you locked up Quinn Meinerz in July, and just getting these building blocks locked up long term. Your thoughts on that?
I think those are good football decisions.
Coach announced the captains today. Bo, in particular, what do you think it says about him that as a rookie he was able to earn that respect from his teammates?
Yeah, I think you hit on it. I think that's not something that happens that often, and so I think it's something you earn, and these guys, all of them voted on these guys, and it was probably as clean a result that I'd seen in a while relative to those players that were all selected. But it's unusual for a rookie to get made a captain, and yet by nature that position to some degree is leading, and so but that was something that I think organically takes place throughout the spring and training camp, and goes from there.
Coach, just talking about that, how rare is that? I mean, I think it's the first time with the Broncos since 1967.
Yeah, it's a first for me. Just say rookie period. In fairness to the process, and yet. I think it is what it is. I think it's a credit to him, and I think his teammates felt that he belonged in that position.
When it comes to game planning, how involved do you want the quarterback to be? Is that something that comes organically, just in terms of what you bounce off of? What is that?
Yeah, the game planning itself, periodically there'll be an idea there was an idea that came up. We'll ask, I want to know what these guys really like. But then when it comes to the actual game planning, I think it's more towards the week as we wind down. What are the things that you like on this plan? The last meeting we have is Saturday night. We'll dot, the plays that that player really likes. And if there's a play, he's not as comfortable with, I'll cross it off. So that's kind of how the process goes during the week. If we have a new idea, how do I, in practice, create the look where he gains confidence with that play, and then all of a sudden it's a dotted play. But it's not unusual. On Saturday, you're going through the list, and there's a play that, God, I love this play, and he's, whoever that player is kind of like, and I'm like, you just. But I think, hearing those final thoughts are important.
How's Ryan's open? Look at the Mrs. Summer's
Good. He was good moving out. He was moving out there today. He's feeling well. His testing numbers and all the metrics that come back relative to it are going well.
You've done this for a long time. Is there some things intangible you will look for to know Bo's comfortable out there on Sunday in that environment, beyond performance, but the things you were watching to see to make sure you got kind of a slow heartbeat?
Yeah, look, that's a good question. I don't know, part of that is up to us relative to, how you begin the game. And really it was no different than, those first, call it 10 plays at Indianapolis. They come, everyone's going to have them. And I think even for guys that are returning starters, the same thing exists when you start the season. And so, getting to the things that these guys know well and allow them to play fast, I think that's important.
Sean, you talked to us about joker traits with both Jaleel and Greg Dulcich. When do they go from having those traits to kind of being designated as that, in your eyes?
Yeah, good question. I think, certainly both of those guys are guys that can create some matchup issues in the passing game. I kid Jaleel a lot, and he works his tail off. I don't know that I've given him his wings yet, but that's really more just being funny. Look, I think it gets back to trying to highlight the strong suit of what guys do. You know, we're not going to try to run power with Greg, and there's certain things, you know, we're not going to want Jaleel to do, and there's certain things we feel like they do well.
Have you named a starter at the cornerback spot opposite Surtain, and how will you handle that position?
Yeah, I mean, we haven't named any starters. I mean, we kind of have an idea as we're going. No announcements. You know how it is during the game week. You know, I'm not going to talk about injuries. I'm not going to talk about lineups. I mean, with respect. Yeah, they give you a lot of looks. You know, they'll play their odd front, and they'll move that around. You know, they've done a great job. I think in his last 2 years, he's second in the league in, you know, takeaways. So they're an opportunistic, aggressive defense. You know, the challenge this week is you've got the Ravens element when we're looking at defensive film, and yet looking at the Seattle personnel. And so you're kind of going back and forth from a cut-up standpoint. And it's not unusual when you have a new staff. And then defensively, you know, you have a new offensive coordinator who's coming from college. So you're paying attention to the preseason, of course, but then also maybe trends and things that they've done prior. Obviously, with Mike, you know, there's a lot of Baltimore in the cut-ups that we're studying, and yet, you know, how much makes it in year one into Seattle's package, you know, only they would know that, not us. But they do a good job with disguise. They hold their disguise as well. Yeah, I mean, they create some challenges. Yeah, it's just a matter of how far you want to go back. Yeah.
What's the importance of having the right? You talk about a young and hungry team, but having the right vets there to complement that youthful energy.
I think, look, any young team still, you're counting on experience and leadership. And so, you know, he's one of those guys that I think he ended up with the most votes. And I wouldn't say it's just because of his experience. I'd say it's because of his personality. It's because of how he works. There's so many other traits. So, you know, years in the league, I don't think equates necessarily to being a good captain. I think there's more to it than that, and I think that's the way that his teammates looked at it. All right, thanks.